Yeah, hi. Uh, Thanks, Latika. Uh, Thanks for briefing me. Hi, all. Can you, I mean, are you able to see my screen and the video both?
Yes, Nataraj.
Okay. Thanks for the confirmation. Uh, yeah. So since morning, we are hearing about a lot of things on Azure, and everyone is good with the uh, topics as well as learning some or the other things is what I hope, because I learned many things from the morning. So which is a very good platform that Value Momentum is providing, and I'm very happy to be part of this presentation. Okay, so yeah, coming to my topic, it's test automation on Azure. It's like how we are leveraging the Azure along with an automation. So in present day, in the IT world, as you most of you know, that automation is playing an vital role as well as Azure DevOps. So what and how can we leverage both of this with a combination? So that's what my topic is. So let's discuss, like first we'll come to know or understand what is exactly automation, and how is it integrated with Azure DevOps, and then we'll see the major environments and how the ADO pipelines, and then we'll go with the regression approach as well as what are the benefits out of automation with Azure. That combination will see the benefits so that it can be leveraged across the enterprises or organizations. So we'll take the questions later. Yeah, now coming to first. Yeah, so it's Azure DevOps. See, everyone, I mean, by now you're you would have understood what is Azure DevOps, and all those combinations and repositories and databases, including Kubernetes. In the last session, we have learned. So the main consolidated or brief about Azure DevOps is uh, it's nothing but a platform where we can have the code repositories, executions, reporting, and we can schedule the uh, work items. So basically, the Azure DevOps project will house the execution pipelines as well as the code repository, so that we can leverage it to store our scripts. So now coming to actual structure here, you can see user and Azure DevOps. So this Azure DevOps is the one platform where we can have the test cases, as I said, code repository and reporting techniques and everything. Pipelines will be there. So from here, this is the place where we can have the uh, work items like test cases or user stories, whatever you take it. So from here, we can trigger through automation tool. You can trigger the test cases, and it'll execute. If it is UI, we can have, see, test cases means any functionality will be either UI or API or mobile. So for all these three things, like if the application is a web UI user interface or an API, then the control goes to Azure virtual machines, which will be controlled by Azure Dev Test Lab, and there, based on the incoming or based on the quantity or based on the number of items triggered, based on that, the number of Azure virtual machines will be auto allocated. Here we need not do any manual thing. So it will be auto allocated number of virtual machines, and the items will get uh, triggered and run. So after the run, the test results will go and be stored in Azure SQL database. Similarly, if it is web UI or API test, it go in this way. And if it is a mobile, so mobile means everyone knows that how mobile is playing an important role in everyone's life. So whatever we are trying to have on machines, we are almost there with the same things, apps, applications, or whatever on mobiles. And in mobile also, mobiles, tabs, Mac, etc. So wherever you go, like if it is mobile, it can be either Android or iOS. So any of those also will be feasible, and we can have those test cases run in Azure App Center, and then the results will be stored in Azure SQL DB. So from SQL DB, the results will be there here, and from there we can pull the test results using queries to Azure Power BI, wherein we can have the pictorial representation of the results, as well as we can have the graphs, dashboards. All those are there in Azure. So we can leverage any of those, and we can have those the results will be automatically updated in those dashboards if we design and develop using the queries to pull the results from Azure SQL DB. So if we give the dashboard link to the stakeholders, at any point of time, they can just on a single click, they can see the progress. Progress in the sense results, how the results are updated. So based on the results, all the metrics, the statistics, everything comes into picture later. So that will give a brief idea on how and what the results are happening, and how the application is behaving and all. So they can have the health of the application on a single click. So this is on automation with Azure. If we go further deep dive from this slide, so wherever I'm saying this web UI or API, it will run in Azure VM and all. So if I expand it, how it works is like this actual integration between the automation framework that we have. So see, everyone knows that it is nothing but a build deployment. So ADO build deployment, the code will get into test engine where we have the automated test scripts or impacted test cases. And here we can use any type of technologies which we have learned since morning, like artificial intelligence and all. We can design and we can identify the impacted test cases or all test cases, and we can use the NLP technique as well to optimize further based on the code which is deployed at that particular point of time, which is nothing but code to test mapping. And we can store test case and work items and the code. So with this, it will indirectly or directly says that it's a coverage, how much test coverage it's been happening with the available test cases in the, so that is nothing but a code coverage. And obviously change history will also be there. So when the build happened and how it went, all those change history will also be there in the test engine. So from there, if after I have integrated my automation to framework with this Azure DevOps using REST API calls, the test suite, the test suite will be invoked to run or to be executed, and that can be done using a any test management tool like ALM, So inbuilt tools will also be there. So from there, the using REST API call, it will be triggered, and then the execution happens in Azure machines here. So as I said, Azure machines will be allocated based on the number of incoming work items. Based on that, it will be allocated and executed. So after the execution completes, then the test results will be stored in Azure DevOps as well as the automation framework that anybody will have. So this automation framework normally in today's world, every organization is going with enterprise level framework because they want to utilize, reutilize and all those things. And it's a cost saving as well if we use the enterprise level automation framework. And obviously this can be with a combination of Selenium, C#, Java, based on the applications that we have. Now, after the results are stored, if the results are passed, then as I said, from SQL DB, it will be stored and we can pick from there and have a pictorial representation like dashboards or whatever and share it to the stakeholders. And if the results are getting failed, then what happens? So then there will be an email triggered. We learned, right? Azure notification separate thing is there. So using that, we have emails triggered once the test cases are getting failed or passed, whatever. If it is passed, okay, we are good. If it is failing, then SDETs will be performing the failure analysis, and based on the failure analysis, we can share the reports to the stakeholders. So here, all the things like using REST API call, the test suite will be invoked and the test cases will be triggered. But here the test cases are can be of UI, web UI, or API, or Cosmos DB, or APIs, anything it can be. So based on the type of test case, it will be triggered in Azure virtual machines because already Azure is integrated with all those ASB, Azure Service Bus, Cosmos database, SQL database, everything. So that's how it is on the integration of Azure DevOps and automation. Now let us go further on what all the environments that we have in ADO pipeline, Azure DevOps pipeline. See, in the previous session, we learned like ADO pipeline with the CI/CD and all, continuous integration and deployment. So this is the next, deep dive on that part, I can say. So everyone knows that like the code deployment will be from developer local box first with the unit testing and all. After that, it goes to development environment if it is an enterprise level framework, automation framework. And similarly, so once the code is deployed to dev environment, there is a smoke test, smoke suite, which is already built. So once the dev code is deployed, smoke will get triggered, and if the smoke passes, then only the code will be further pushed to subsequent environment, which is integration. So if the smoke is getting failed, then automatically we'll be getting an email and we have to SDETs can do the failure analysis and give a confirmation. Then in that case, there can be a manual intervention to push the code from dev to integration. But otherwise, if everything goes fine, then automatically the code will be pushed to integration. And once the code is pushed to integration, what happens? Again, there is a smoke, and this smoke is not. This smoke is further refined from the dev smoke. Like we'll be adding a few more test cases based on the integrity, and then here also the same case. If the smoke gets passed, then only two things happens. One is it will trigger a smart regression. Smart regression is like a kind of mini regression that will help us to know the health condition of the application based on the current code deployed. So if it gets passed, and then immediately the code will be further pushed to subsequent environment, which is user. Again, in user also there is a smoke again, and if that smoke gets passed, it will trigger a full regression. But this full regression we can schedule periodically as we want, because See, user deployment may happen once in every sprint or once in a week or once in a day, something like that, based on the need and the project severity and need. On demand basis, we can schedule. Anybody can schedule like that. So if we schedule user deployment on every day, then we cannot run full regression on every day because it will be again a time consuming. So, and it is not that needed as well. So at that point of time, we can schedule only this full regression to run once after every sprint or once in a month. So we can schedule that as if, as a in Azure DevOps, we have that facility to schedule it based on the approval from stakeholders. So that we can do. Now, coming to regression approach. This is a very important for any software or a product or whatever we are deploying to production or any lower environments as well. So as I said, regression is very important. We have to keep track of the health condition of the application as and when we are pushing some code, maybe functional or business requirement related code or some bug fix or some e-fix or anything. So at that point of time, what we need to know is we have to track whether the new code which is getting deployed is impacting any other existing application or the requirements or like that we have to track. So for that purpose, as nowadays we are going only with agile methodology because of its fastest and continuous integration and deployment using Azure. So we'll be having sprints. So sprint on sprint will be adding code, right? So based on the new functionalities or enhancements that we get as a business requirements. So once we do that coding, and then we will be testing it as part of functional test. Once we do the functional test, what we have to think is whether any of these functional tests should be part of regression, because in the end of the sprint or in the next sprint, if another new code is deployed, what if what it happens if it is behaving the same the application after that? So for that, for ensuring that, we'll be identifying the regression candidates or test cases from the functional testing, and this is the main suite. Here we will do after every sprint, we'll identify the impacted test cases and update the test cases when there is a new object added in the application. We have to find the XPath and all, and we can update the script. And there may be sometimes need to update the framework as well. Like for example, if we have some APIs and based on the requirements, sometimes we may have to update or modify the endpoint URLs. So at that particular point of time, that can be a statically called or dynamically called. Okay, but anyhow, that endpoint URLs might be updated in the framework sometimes, or there may be some application changes, the back end of the application, the code .NET or Java, the object referencing, all those things will be there. So based on that also, we may have to update the framework. So we will do all those things, and the regression suite will be with the all updated test cases. And after each sprint, we'll identify the regression candidates if possible, or we will try to optimize the test cases so that we can have minimum number of candidates so that we can leverage the time and the regression can be faster with the quality. So mostly we will try to identify the cases or candidates based on the bug prone area or bug prone functionality. So, and then automate in the sense scripting the test cases. And this is a continuous optimization technique that we are using. And the final regression suite will be having like this updated regression suite. And this will be executed once in a sprint. After the sprint is completed, we'll trigger this. Based on the results, the SDETs can perform the failure analysis if there are any failures. And based on the failure analysis, we can go ahead further whether the application is good for the production deployment or not. So based on that, we'll be taking it further. Okay. So that's pretty much on regression approach. Now coming to the most important, I can say this is automation with Azure. So till now we have discussed on automation in integration with Azure DevOps. So how it goes and how it triggers and how the results behave. How can we represent the results and share the results to required stakeholders and all. So now, why should we go with automation with Azure? What are the benefits? Is there really a benefit out of that? Because every service or a every software or a product maker, every organization will try to have these benefits because these benefits are most important for further progress of the organization. So first point, optimized workflows and allocation of resources. So as I said, based on the number of candidates or work items, the Azure virtual machines will be automatically allocated, which means the allocation of the resources is optimized and it is done automatically. So that's where the importance is. And with this combination automation with Azure, as I said, it can be integrated with websites, servers, storage, etc. I told right, we can have on-prem servers, we can have cloud servers. Azure virtual machines itself means it's a cloud-based server, right? And websites, application, web UIs, and storage. We can integrate SQL DB and all. So that also, and microservices also we have learned, right? So all microservices can also be tested easily. And nowadays microservices is playing a very vital role because of its time saving. Because if you are going with UI, it may take 10 minutes for a end-to-end flow of a functionality. But if you go with a microservice, it may take maximum of a minute. So obviously, everyone will see the time saving and the quality. So quality at the same time, quality is very much important. So that's on integration and global development and faster delivery. This is we can correlate with the continuous integration and continuous deployment because of the structure and the resources and the facilities that we have in Azure DevOps makes us to have the manage the configurations, which is configuration management, and it is very much fast in delivery because we are going with agile and deploying the code very much regularly on a day-to-day basis. I heard somewhere that nowadays the few organizations are going with production deployments once in every 10 minutes. So that's
sorry to interrupt. You have 5 minutes left for the session.
Sure, Latika. Thanks for the reminder. So yeah, so people are going with 10 minutes. When we were in waterfall model, it used to take months and months. Now that months have come to 10 minutes. So you can imagine and think how faster the industry is growing and that happening on the IT industry. And at the same time, it's obviously reducing the cost as well as it is allowing us to invest upfront. So because of agile methodology and we are moving the code, we are deploying in a continuous integrity. So the investment is getting reduced. And obviously it is reliable service and reusability. So we can reuse most of the test cases with parameterization and a lot of concepts that we can induce on automation frameworks and test management tools. We can have lots and lots of features to minimize the manual intervention and go with automation process. We heard about RPA, robotic process automation. So all those things comes into picture, whether it's a mobile testing or a UI testing or a API testing, whatever, we can do anything automated way in combination with Azure DevOps. And effective CI/CD implementation is also possible with automation that we are currently doing. So that's really saving our time. If it is a very big program, okay, and previously it used to take at least 2 to 3 years for a big program. Nowadays we could do that complete program within 1 year or even less also. So based on the planning, that also we learned effective planning in our previous session. So effective planning, early planning, best planning, and having the right technologies in the right place, we can go faster. So it's nothing, I mean, as well as the last point, which is not the least, higher test coverage. So these are the benefits out of automation with Azure. I'm done with the presentation, Latika. So
yes,
now I'm open with
questions.
questions.
Take some time for questions. So I'll read the first question for you.
Okay.
The first question is, does Azure DevOps require coding?
To be frank, like Azure DevOps does not need any coding. If you know the basics, like very basic Linux commands and all, that should suffice.
Okay. And the next question is, what are the popular DevOps tool for continuous integration and the continuous deployment?
Yeah, this is like we have since morning we are hearing most of them, like for continuous integration we can have like Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, GitLab and all. And for continuous deployment also we can use the same things like Jenkins, Bamboo, and most importantly Azure pipelines, which I have shown you, ADO pipelines. That is another thing for deployment tools.